All right, shake, rattle, and hum. Here we go. I got to move this thing out of the way so I'm not distracted by it. All right, I can no longer see your interactions right now. I'm on Vimeo. All right, let's go to Mark chapter 13. Our morning word this morning is watching, and waiting. Watching and waiting. I want to give a shout out. Let's do the cup up to all of our morning word crowd. God bless you. God bless America. God bless you, Manoj Tandy in India. Thank you for just being a part of the morning word crowd and being with us. Thankful for what you do with the orphans in India, and grateful that you've allowed us to be a part of what you're doing over there, and thank you for being with us. Thank you to all the crowd that gave. Manoj told me yesterday or day before yesterday that the funds were released. They have it, and they will be sending us pictures and evidences of where they're spending the money and letting you guys keep up with it. He's going to send me pictures. I'm going to post them on Facebook, and we'll keep you guys up to speed with that. I want to say thank you to all of our school teachers, more and more so every day. Good Lord, have mercy. To our first responders, to our military personnel, to our police officers and firefighters. Man, I just can't tell you guys, and I like to mention you every morning because you just don't get mentioned enough. You're taken for granted. And so thank you all for what you do. Y'all is a southern term for anybody that's watching from the north or the west. But anyway, this morning, our morning word is watching and waiting. Yesterday in Mark chapter 13, we talked about full hearts and empty pockets and about giving. And Jesus was in the temple observing how the people gave their money. And all of this was prior to his going to the cross. And he was looking for that exhibition of passion, of love and faith. And so here in the last chapter or so, he's been expressing to us, demonstrating to us, to them in the scriptures there and to us, how to be living our lives in the last days and how to be preparing for his return, which he addresses now. And I'm not going to go into the eschatological breakdown of Mark chapter 13 about the beginning of sorrows, the wars, the rumors of wars, the false prophets, the false teachers, the preaching of the gospel, so forth and so on, the abomination of desolation, the tribulation, and all of those things, okay? And then goes down in verse 24 and 28 and says, at the end of the tribulation, he'll come. But here's what I want you to look at. The verses that I want us to focus on this morning is verse 32 to 37. Here's what Jesus said. But of that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Now, what was he talking about there? Well, he was, of course, Jesus as part of the Godhead, one with his Father. He certainly knows when the time is. He couldn't be telling you about these other things without knowing what the time is. But what he's saying is in his humanity, in his human flesh that he took on to become and live on our behalf, he does not know that time. He's waiting for that to be disclosed in its own time by the Father. Now, he goes down and he says, take heed, watch and pray, for you do not know when the time is. It is like a man going to a far country who left his house and gave authority to his servants, and to each his work, and commanded the doorkeeper to watch. Watch therefore, for you do not know when the master of the house is coming, in the evening, at midnight, at the crowing of the rooster, or in the morning, lest coming suddenly, he finds you sleeping. And what I say to you, I say to all. And then he has this word, capital W, capital W, ATCH, exclamation point. Watch, watch, watch. So when we read for the morning word consideration, when we read Mark chapter 13 with regards to the end times and the events, and without getting bogged down into teaching after teaching after teaching, which is something that I'm doing on Sunday mornings right now, somewhat with regards to that topic, I think that what we need to take away from the morning word crowd at the end of the day, the bottom line is this: we need to be watching and working, preparing. Since we don't know the time of Christ's return, Jesus said, "What I say to you, I say to all, watch." Now, what does that mean? Watch. Well, anytime in the scriptures and in the biblical times when they had what they called watching, particularly pertained to prayer. They called it the midnight watch, or watching when Jesus was in the garden anticipating going to the cross the next morning. He said, "Can you not watch with me? Could you not watch with me 1 hour? Could you not watch with me?" So what he was doing was praying, and that was part of a preparation. We'll get to that in a minute. So there was the prayer of anticipation, prayers of expectation of what was coming. That's called watching. It's being alert in the spirit. It's being discerning. It's understanding the times that we live in, and having a sense of expectation. And that he goes over here in verse 28, and he says, when you start to see these kinds of things go on, you need to anticipate their coming quickly. Just like if you looked at a fig tree and saw that it had figs on it, you would have leaves on it, you would have the expectation that there would be figs on it, because right before a fig tree bears figs, it leaves out. That came into play in some other parables that Jesus had. So he said, when you see these kinds of things occurring, then you need to be especially alert and attentive to the fact that I'm coming back, okay? So sometimes when we study eschatology, last day things, tribulation, all that kind of thing, all of those kind of things, we start thinking about, oh my God, and it's supposed to be fearful, and people start trying to say, well, I need some bullets, I need some bread, I need some water, that's not what that is the antithesis, really, of what Jesus said. What he said was, as you see these things happening, you need to be preparing for my return, okay? Not the Antichrist, not the tribulation. You need to be preparing for my return. And he said, when he said, and he gave the analogy, he said, it's take heed and watch and pray, for you don't know when the time is. He said, it's like a man going to a far country. Jesus is likening himself to this man who left his house and gave authority to his servants. That's us. To each his work. Now see that he gave us something to do in the earth and commanded the doorkeeper to watch. So that's why I came up with the watching and working. That's what you and I should be focusing on in these last days. Watching for the return of Christ and working. Having an attentive spirit, petitioning the Lord in prayer for his return. Okay? And preparing. He said, lest he return suddenly, which means it's going to be unexpected, and just like that, he said he finds you sleeping. That is analogous back to a parable that we haven't gone over yet, but in the morning word, it's the sleeping virgins. They all fell asleep. And when they heard the midnight cry, they awakened and trimmed their lamps, and only those that had oil went in. So what he was talking about there was preparation, being prepared for the time of the Lord's return. Now, why does he say that? Because human nature, our fallen Adamic nature, of which we still have a residing remnant, even after we've been born again, there's the tendency to be slothful, procrastinating, apathetic, uncaring, and stuck in a routine, We talked about this a little bit Sunday when we preached. Jesus had John write a letter to the church at Ephesus. He said, you're doing all the right things, but you're doing it with the wrong motive because your love for me has grown cold. So in these last days, part of what would be watching would be praying that we would be energized by the Spirit, that God's holy fire in us would be burning brightly since we are the light of the world, that we would be on fire for the Lord, that our passion would be hot, and that our work, that we would be working. What is our work? Well, our work is to love others as Christ has loved us. And that, he says specifically over here, this gospel must be preached in verse 10 of chapter 13. This gospel must first be preached to all the nations, and then the end will come. So we should be getting the gospel out in every shape, form, or fashion. We're kind of doing that here on the Morning Word by just being here on the Morning Word, but also being involved in mission work with Manoj and supporting him and various other ministries that we've taken up money for. So part of the ministry of the Morning Word is to keep you and I prepared on a daily basis to meet the Lord and also to be engaged in His work. It doesn't mean just to sit down and look. It means to get down and pray and then get up and work. That's what it means, because our prayer of anticipation and expectation puts us into a mode of preparation. And it says that we would be found working when He comes, that we would be found laboring in the harvest. Jesus said the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers, see, that's the people that do the work. The laborers are few. Here's what Jesus said: pray, therefore, that the Lord of the harvest would send forth laborers into the harvest. So that's part of our watchful prayer, is as we anticipate the Lord's return, pray that God would send more people into the harvest. Now, guys, listen, that's the command of Jesus. But also, Jesus knows something about that prayer that you and I don't know. And here's what it is. When you begin to pray, prayerfully focus on something, that becomes a priority in your life. When you and I begin to focus our prayers on something, that becomes a priority in our life. Well, you know what you and I do with priorities? We get involved in them. Those things that are a priority for us, we get involved. I'm just telling you that when you start praying for the Lord to send laborers into the harvest, He's going to start with you. That's why He said pray for laborers in the harvest, because you're going to become the volunteer. That's what happened to Isaiah in his prayer. When the Lord said, whom shall I send and who shall go for us? And Isaiah said, here I am, Lord, send me. God's ways are higher than our ways. So He says, pray about this. And the next thing you know, we're not only praying about it, we're out there doing something about it. That's how God works. Cool God, if I could say that. So we should be watching in our prayers. Now, here's something, guys, about that before I move on, and I'll hustle here. We need to be praying. We need to be tailoring our prayers. That is, when I say tailoring, I mean cutting something out like on construction paper. You know how you put an image on there and then you start cutting out the image, all right? And as you cut, the paper takes on the image of the lines that you just drew, so that when you're finished and you take away the part that had nothing to do with the image, all you have left is the image. Well, we should likewise be tailoring our prayers towards the return of Jesus. Towards the return of Jesus. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means that when I'm praying for my children, my prayers should have as part, my prayers for my children, Beth and my prayer for the children should be tailored toward the return of Christ. Are they prepared for the return of Christ? So priority number one is their salvation. Secondly, are they prepared for Christ to come today and see them? That's sanctification, all right? Are they looking for the return of Christ? That's preparation. So when we're praying for things, we should pray from an eternal perspective and the anticipation of the return of Christ. the anticipation of the return of Christ, that our children would be ready, that our church would be ready, that we would be ready, that we would prioritize those things that Jesus prioritized. All right? So sometimes we have a lot of fluff in our prayers. Matter of fact, I was praying this morning. I'll tell you something. I as I disclosed this about my prayer, last night we went to watch Rhett play ball. It played at 7:30. I don't know why they had 6 and 7-year-old kids, 5 and 6-year-old kids playing at 7:30 at night. Because by the time you leave the ball field and get home, it's 9 o'clock. Now that's just stupid. That's my soapbox. I'm just going to call it stupid. Stupid to have the league, stupid to have the game, stupid to have the time, and we're all stupid for going. All right, I was in on stupid, but I hadn't got to watch him play, so I went. But they ought to play on Saturdays, ought to play in the afternoons, play at 5 o'clock, play at 6 o'clock, but don't be playing those 7:30 ball games. Now, I'm finished with that. If y'all get mad, get mad. So anyway, I come home, and I jump in the bed. I did not set my alarm. And I knew I was restless, and I was kind of flopping around, half semi-asleep in my bed, and I said, man, it ought to be getting time to get up. You know what time I rolled over there and looked at the clock? I usually get up at 4 o'clock, mind you. You know what time it was? It was 5:17. I overslept an hour and 17 minutes this morning. Now, I'm not going to throw that off on the ball game, but the ball game did get me out of my routine. You know what that meant? I got up, and I was not ready. I mean, I've got on gym shorts on here. I'm usually ready to go to work when I stand in front of you guys. I was not ready. I didn't have the morning word ready. I wasn't dressed. I haven't started my second cup of coffee. I know thank God you can't smell my breath. I haven't brushed my teeth. I don't have on deodorant. I'm sitting here half cocked, all right, for the morning word. But thankfully, as I opened the word to where I was already reading yesterday, I read this, and God gave this to me, so I wasn't completely lost up here, spinning my wheels, swimming in a circle like a one-legged duck this morning. God did give me a morning word, watch and work, all right? But my point is this. Just like that ball game distracted me and got me out of what I normally do, kept me up past my bedtime by about an hour, got me out of sorts, and I didn't set my alarm. No excuses, but it just happened that way, all right? So I was late. And I was hustled, and I was a little bit frantic when I got up, because Beth usually, I wake her up when I get up, and she lays in the bed another hour, peeking at the clock with one eye every 10 or 15 minutes so she can lollygag in the bed. Well, I said, Beth, I overslept. Boom, she jumped up, because me oversleeping translates to her oversleeping. So she was waiting on me to do something. And that's how we are. I'm just using that as an example. We get caught up in things that are going on in this world, like ball games, all right? And life, and Christmas is coming, and Thanksgiving is coming, and vacation are coming, and the Braves are in the world, playing in the playoffs, and Alabama, has got a lot. We got all that mess on our mind, and we forget about what we're supposed to be doing here. We have no underlying sense of the return of Christ, and consequently, the return of Christ is not being factored into our decisions, and most importantly, our prayers. So I got up this morning and I was praying. I said, Lord, I'm telling you, I'm just telling you what I said. I said, Lord, I don't have time for no 25, 30-minute prayer. I said, they're looking for me. All right, they're going to be looking for me here in about 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And I said, I got to be locked and cocked, which I wasn't. So I said, I just started praying a little bit. And then I went to the Lord's Prayer. And this is the Lord's Prayer. Here's what Jesus said. I thought about this morning. Our Father who art in heaven. I'm quoting you the King James because that's how I memorized it. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. The focus on the glory and the sovereignty of God. Watch this now. Thy kingdom come. Right after the glory of God, right after accolades and giving majesty and glory to God for his goodness, his greatness, Jesus, not by chance, by design, said the next thing you need to pray for with regards to priority is Thy kingdom come. Well, you can't bring a kingdom without a king. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That's the anticipation. That we would be doing the will of God on earth as God wills it in heaven, in anticipation of his coming. And that our work would be in the fields, in the harvest. You say, well, Pastor Randy, I'm not an evangelist. I don't speak very well to people. Listen, your role in getting people saved is wherever you are and the people that you talk to, working in Jesus Christ, his death, burial, resurrection, and his soon return into the conversation. That's your harvest field. Your family is your harvest field. Your workplace is the baseball field is your harvest field. Wherever you spend time, wherever you're working, that's your harvest. And that doesn't mean necessarily that you're always engaged in personal one-on-one. Doesn't exclude it, of course, but it doesn't necessarily limit it to that. It means you can be involved in bringing in the harvest in your prayers by praying for people to go into the harvest, by praying for souls to be saved and praying for them by name. Secondly, you can be in a support role, just like many of you are here on the Morning Word. You and I sending prayers and sending money to Manoj Tandy is going to be used by him to share the gospel in India. So therefore, we are engaged. We are working on the Morning Word towards the return of Christ and the preparation of a people to meet our great Savior, looking for and hastening the blessed hope. Now, guys, we need to think about that. Here's what Jesus said. Don't be afraid. In the context, he said it over and over again, in the context of eschatology, tribulation, the beginning of sorrows, wars, rumors of wars, false prophets, false teachers, deception, also persecution, even unto death. Here's what he said. Focus on my return. Watch and wait. Don't be worried. Watch. That's expect and pray for and pray toward the end of my return. And then be working. When you say amen, hit the ground running. Getting engaged in sharing the gospel directly or indirectly. Whether you be the person on point or the person that's bringing it, whether you're putting out the folding tables for vacation Bible school, you're a part of it. If you're just sitting at home shut in and can't go anywhere, your role is to pray and to help people go out. And it says, how can they hear in whom they have not believed unless it's without a preacher? And it says, how can they go unless they're sent? Sometimes you're just in the sending business when it comes to the global evangelization of the world. So we all have a role. What we need to do is be praying towards the end, praying, looking up. Guys, listen. Here's what I know from the scriptures with regards to anticipation of Christ. It causes preparation. And the preparation, as Colossians says, we look up, and consequently we lighten up. We lighten up. Our priorities get arranged. When we live our lives in anticipation of the return of Christ, a lot of this trivial stuff doesn't matter. The worries, when we see bombs and China testing a hypersonic nuclear capable missile. Y'all know what that means? Let me just throw that in. Y'all know what that means? That China now has the means to send a nuclear bomb all the way around the globe without radar detection. It means it would blow up and could blow up in the United States. We would have no warning. No warning. Just boom, there it is. Well, that's not supposed to worry you. That's supposed to cause you to watch. And the closer you see it, to be more prayerful and work. I kept you a little bit long this morning because it's an important topic. Don't worry. Watch and work. We'll see y'all tomorrow. On time. Locked and cocked. Good Lord willing, and the saints don't rise.